Beneath the shimmering surface of Tampa Bay lies a secret buried for over a decade. This is the story of a lie hidden in plain sight and the 35 souls who paid the ultimate price for it. It's a tale of warnings ignored, of a $0 fix dismissed, and of a catastrophe that was not a sudden act of God, but a slow-motion tragedy years in the making. This is a collision course between human error and human neglect, between a storm that couldn't be predicted and a disaster that absolutely could. We are about to unravel the buried truth behind the Sunshine Skyway Bridge collapse, a tragedy that echoes a chilling warning from the past to our very present. To continue, please like and subscribe. 35 lives claimed by the sea in an instant, because at the heart of America's most lethal bridge collapse was a secret long concealed. For 11 years, officials knew the protective barriers meant to shield the Sunshine Skyway Bridge had corroded into oblivion. Modern vessels were crashing directly into its exposed skeleton. They knew a disaster was inevitable. Yet they took no action. A repair that would have cost nothing was dismissed, a reality hidden until the 9th of May, 1980. When a freighter's pilot, sightless in a squall no forecast had seen coming, made a decision that would fracture the heavens. A bus packed with students, automobiles carrying families, a 150-foot fall into the abyss. The Coast Guard faulted the captain, faulted the storm, but the true cause of death was the secret they had buried long before the first victim was lost to the waves. This is the story of why that secret needed to be silenced forever. But before we start, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel to help grow our community. Throughout the early part of the 20th century, the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, was a settlement located on a narrow peninsula. Residents who wished to access territories across the bay were forced to either endure a lengthy drive or utilize ferry boats for their journey. A bridge was first proposed in 1926, and while the idea was popular, actual progress was delayed first by the Great Depression and subsequently by the onset of World War II. It was not until 1954 that a construction linking the southern part of Tampa Bay was completed. Built by Parsons, Brinkerhoff, Hogan, and McDonald, and named through a statewide competition, this bridge was a significant achievement. Though relatively narrow, it was at the time the world's longest continuous bridge, possessing a main section that ran for 6.7 kilometers or 4.14 miles. It was a steel cantilever design, holding up a two-lane roadway on concrete piers set into the floor of the bay. A somewhat steep grade at each end allowed the structure to climb high enough over the water so as not to obstruct the busy shipping lane beneath it. The bridge was immensely popular, prompting the addition of a twin section in 1971 to ease congestion. This new span was essentially a mirror image, providing a second roadway so that traffic moving in opposite directions would have its own lane. While the bridge's elevated deck allowed ships to pass below, its concrete supports presented a clear hazard to navigation. Between 1969 and 1980, 7 marine vessels collided with these piers. Though in almost every instance the boats involved were relatively small, the damage was minor, and the bridge's structural integrity was never compromised. That would all change on May 9, 1980. At 6:30 a.m. that morning, experienced harbor pilot John Larrow was transferred to the MV Summit Venture, a 186-meter, 609-foot bulk cargo ship. Larrow's task was to guide the ship safely out of the port. It was standard practice for large ships like the Summit Venture to rely on local, highly trained pilots for harbor navigation. Once clear of the port, Larrow would leave the ship, and the captain of the Summit Venture would take back control. That morning, the weather was unfavorable, with periods of rain and fog. Larrow had spent the early hours monitoring conditions and had radioed at least one other ship near the Sunshine Skyway for updates. While not perfect, no major weather warning had been issued for mariners, and visibility was still acceptable. Based on this, Larrow began directing the Summit Venture out of the harbor. As the freighter neared the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, a violent squall suddenly arrived. Strong winds, heavy rain, and thick fog appeared without warning, the deluge so severe it rendered the ship's radar useless. Larrow ordered lookouts to the bow to visually track channel markers. He proceeded with caution, directing the crew to stand ready to drop anchor if necessary. By this point, the Summit Venture had veered off course. Rather than heading toward the main bridge span, it was moving toward one of the concrete supports. Larrow did not realize this until the pier emerged from the fog directly ahead, barely a ship's length away. Larrow ordered the anchor dropped and attempted corrective maneuvers, but it was too late. At 7:33 a.m., the freighter struck a main support pier of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. Almost immediately, a 395-meter, 1,297-foot section of the southbound roadway fell straight into the bay below, taking multiple vehicles with it. Larrow immediately sent an emergency transmission to the Coast Guard. Dispatch all available emergency units to the Skyway Bridge. A vessel has just struck the Skyway Bridge. The Skyway Bridge has given way. Send every rescue unit to the Skyway Bridge. The Skyway Bridge is down. This is a mayday. Extreme emergency. Stop all traffic on the Skyway Bridge. Stopping traffic, however, was not immediately possible. Above, one driver was moving slowly southbound when he noticed no cars were visible on the bridge ahead. He later described his experience to the National Transportation Safety Board. "I saw the red aircraft warning lights on the bridge superstructure west of the road. Suddenly, those red lights dropped from their position to somewhere below the road in front of me. I began braking, and right after the lights fell, I saw the steel framework ahead collapsing. It seemed to sway and topple as it went down. The man stopped his vehicle and began reversing. I likely reversed half to two-thirds of the way back down the incline I had just driven up. I saw headlights from southbound cars approaching, so I stopped, rolled down my left window, and started waving my arms outside, hitting the side of my car and yelling at passing traffic to stop." After stopping, he recalled about 3 cars and then a bus driving south. Most, including the bus, could not brake in time when they reached the collapsed section. They fell into the bay below. The driver of the last car that managed to stop did so with very little room. He got out of his vehicle, leaving it perched precariously at the edge. In total, 6 cars, 1 truck, and a Greyhound bus either fell during the initial collapse or were unable to stop before driving over the broken edge. The drop was significant, approximately 46 meters, 150 feet. The National Transportation Safety Board later reported that damage to vehicles falling from the bridge into the water was consistent with impact on a solid surface. Only 1 person who entered the water survived. Wesley McIntyre, 56 years old, felt his vehicle fall during the bridge's initial failure. He later explained that the rapid drop caused him to instinctively hit the brakes, which was of course ineffective. His truck struck the Summit Venture before falling into the bay, after which Mr. McIntyre was able to fight his way out and reach the surface. He was pulled from the water by the crew of the Summit Venture. Mr. McIntyre was the only survivor rescued in this manner. The other 35 people who fell from the bridge inside their vehicles died in the water. 25 of the fatalities were on the bus, a Greyhound carrying a number of students from Tuskegee University, among others. After the disaster, an investigation was launched. A Coast Guard inquiry criticized pilot John Larrow's decision to proceed despite the bad conditions, stating it contributed to the accident. However, it also acknowledged that many other factors played a role. These included the unexpected severity of the squall and favorable weather reports received from other vessels in the area. It was also noted that the concrete piers were not equipped with protective fenders. Wooden bumpers had been installed around the support bases during the bridge's construction, but these had deteriorated quickly and were never replaced. In the end, Mr. Larrow was cleared of negligence, with recognition that he had taken reasonable actions based on the information and options available to him. Mr. Larrow returned to work as a harbor pilot, but was soon diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and could no longer continue. He later held several positions, including instructing nautical science cadets at SUNY Maritime College. There, he used his experience as a lesson, often warning, "If you misjudge, you've got hell to pay." 35 lives. A bridge consumed by the sea. A pilot forever haunted by that hell to pay. Officials labeled it unforeseeable. They blamed the storm. They blamed the captain. But the decay had begun years earlier. When they saw the fenders rot away, recorded 7 prior strikes, and chose to do nothing, was it a concealed truth or criminal negligence? Why was wood only replaced with concrete after the bay was stained with blood? And why did a shrimp boat demonstrate that a zero-cost solution could have saved everyone? Today, new concrete dolphins protect the Sunshine Skyway, but below the water, the ghosts of 35 still murmur a warning. The next catastrophe won't be a storm or a ship or a secret. It will be the echo of decisions we were unwilling to make.